Let's get Peter into this conversation. Absolute one of our favorites, and very dialed in on this situation. Football morning in America, NBC Sports. Peter King joins us on Willard and Dibs. Styles in for Dibs 95.7 The Game. Peter, good afternoon and thank you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
We're good, man, and obviously everybody is still receiving the news of the last 24 to 48 hours. And I'd start out by asking you, what do you think happens next? What does this all look like by the time we get to next Tuesday?
Well, my gut feeling, and it is only a gut feeling, because I think, and look, this is a multi-layered thing, okay? Let's start at the end. My gut feeling is that Trey Lance stays with the 49ers, okay? And the reason why I think he stays, because I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to understand that the team that could want him the most and actually pay some decent compensation is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. But this is terrible timing for the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm not saying it's impossible timing, because I don't know what the front office thinks. But can you imagine if the Minnesota Vikings in the next few days trade for Trey Lance and trade, let's say, a third-round pick for him? I don't think the Niners are going to get much more than that, but who knows? I don't know. And let's just say that happens. Then if if that happens, then Kirk Cousins is going to enter this season knowing that it is highly likely that his replacement is on the roster and he is a lame duck entering his age 35 season. And it would just be a bad signal to send to the most important player in your franchise. That's why I think that, and look, maybe there's another team out there who loved Trey Lance, prior to the draft in 2021. But I don't know how anybody could love Trey Lance right now. I could see why you would want to have him on your team, because he's a very interesting prospect. But to love him, how in the world would you have any idea whether you're in love with Trey Lance? The guy has played basically one season of football since graduating from high school at a mid-level high school in the state of Minnesota. I mean, how do you judge the value of a guy like that? Plus, he can't stay upright. And again, look, some of that is fluky, obviously, but I think the biggest issue here right now is that I think the 49ers would get more for Trey Lance after this season than they would get for him by next Tuesday.
Peter, how do you think that the Niners, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, how do you view they handled the whole Trey Lance situation from draft night until now?
I mean, obviously it's easy to look at it now and say they royally screwed it up. But, the guy sprains his knee in the middle of his first chance in 2021, and then he's out for a week, but he's not really right, and so that's it for that season, basically. And then last year, he's handed the job. Everything looks like it's golden. He's going to get his real long-term opportunity, and he breaks his ankle. And so that would be fine if Brock Purdy played like Skylar Thompson or some other seventh-round schmo coming into his rookie year. But he didn't. He played fantastic. And so, therefore, you now enter the offseason, and you know that if Brock Purdy is healthy, he's your guy. And not just your guy, sort of. He is your guy. So, I mean, I guess you can criticize the 49ers for picking him instead of just sitting there at number 15 or whatever it was and picking Mac Jones. You can obviously or number 12, I guess it would have been. But I think that is having that's better than 20/20 hindsight. That's like Ted Williams vision hindsight. And I don't know how you could have predicted what was going to happen. And the fact is that everybody knew the day that Trey Lance was drafted, everyone knew that he needed time. He needed to play. And they have not been able to. They've tried to give him that opportunity, and he's gotten hurt. So that's who knows. I don't know what the right word for it is, but I don't think you blame John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan for twice him having the opportunity to be the starting quarterback and getting hurt both times. Look, the 49ers' 7-year quarterback situation since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over, it's been 6 years and now heading into year 7, is the craziest quarterback situation I have seen in 40 years of covering professional football. and this is just the latest chapter, obviously.
Peter King with us here on 95.7 The Game. Peter, is the current discussion about trading Trey Lance, is it more driven by the desire to get Trey to a good spot, or is it more driven by what the 49ers think of Trey currently as a player?
No, I don't think it's either one. I think it is driven by the fact that if Trey Lance is on the team this year, there is always going to be a little bit of media and fan mayhem around him. Okay? The reason why, and look, I was there in camp a week or so ago and wrote a long chunk of my column this week about the quarterback situation and particularly about how Kyle Shanahan has handled it. But I think one of the interesting things about the situation that they're in right now is that, look, they have seen enough out of Sam Darnold to know that they would be happy to have him as a backup quarterback. He'd probably be essentially, other than Jimmy Garoppolo, the best backup quarterback Shanahan Lynch has had in 7 years. And then, they have a third-string quarterback who they believe is usable, workable. So, in my opinion, I think this is about as long as they keep Trey Lance, there's going to be this drumbeat of fans who say, you got to give him a chance. You paid too much to not give him a chance. And then you also have, what is it going to be like to have Trey Lance around all season? Okay. And so part of me, I started this conversation by saying my gut feeling is he stays. The reason why it wouldn't surprise me one bit is that Shanahan and Lynch could have privately decided right now. They could have. And I don't know if they have or not, but they could have privately decided right now, we got to take whatever we can get for this guy. It's a totally untenable situation. But you know why I wouldn't do that? Kyle Shanahan has operated in this mayhem, in this C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, Garoppolo, Hoyer, chaos for 6 years, and now it'll be a 7th year. So he's operated. He's whatever 9 over 500, including playoffs, with the weirdest quarterback situation in recent NFL history, and one of the weirdest ever in NFL history. So my only point is, particularly after how well Trey Lance played in the preseason game last weekend. I mean, you're going to give this guy up for nothing, and he's going to go somewhere and be a really good player, potentially. And so that's why if I were the 49ers, I hang on to him. I absolutely, totally hang on to him. I don't get rid of him. And you just cope with, the quasi firestorm that you're going to have, because that's just the way life is in the NFL when you've got a weird quarterback situation like the Niners have.
Peter, does making Sam Darnold QB2, when we talk about his arm talent, we know what he did at USC, does making him QB2 say more about Sam Darnold and what the Niners believe he could be in this offense, or say more about how behind Trey is?
I think probably how behind Trey is, because really, if you're the 49ers and you have to go win, Brock Purdy, slips in the shower and he's going to miss 3 weeks, okay, with a sprained knee, and you got to go win the next 3 games, 3 big games. Who are you going to be more comfortable playing right now? Are you going to be more comfortable playing a totally inexperienced Trey Lance? Or are you going to be more comfortable playing a guy who has played a lot more football in his life, going back to his days, in college? What are you going to be more comfortable doing? And that, to me, I'd be a lot more comfortable right now with Darnold. Now, look, I'm just saying, if you're Kyle Shanahan, if Trey Lance plays lights out this weekend, I'm just telling you, do not trade this guy. I just think it'd be a big mistake.
Peter King with us here on 95.7 The Game. Peter, I'm sure that you've at least attempted to have conversations to find out what Trey's thinking. Where do you think he would like to be right now?
Anywhere but San Francisco. I mean, if I were him, I would want to go to a place that had a good coach of quarterbacks, a place that he knows that he could just have a little bit of a growth year this year in another offense, knowing that, opening the off season in 2024, he'd have a legitimate chance to compete for a starting job. Now, the reason why I say that I'd be hesitant about Minnesota is a very simple reason, okay? The Minnesota Vikings, if Kirk Cousins plays great and they win 2 playoff games, are going to sign Kirk Cousins, okay? They're not going to dump Kirk Cousins if he has a good year and takes them further in the playoffs than he has taken them to this point. The idea of the Vikings trading for Trey Lance now and putting all of these doubts in a guy who is a big thinker, in Kirk Cousins, I think it'd be a terrible move by the Vikings. But what I would want if I were Trey Lance is to go to a place. Kevin O'Connell is a very good coach of the position. I'd want to go there. I might want to go, if you're going to get traded right now, and even though I don't think they would do it, you might want to go to Washington to see what Eric Bieniemy / Patrick Mahomes can rub off on him. And so I'd want to go to a guy who can coach the quarterback, and I would want to go to a place where I knew that, hey, look, everybody's got their quarterback situation set up for this year. I want to go to a place where I'm solid number 2, and at worst, next spring, I have a good chance to compete for the starting quarterback job.
Peter, one of the things I'm struggling with, you've said it in this conversation, Tom Pelissero said it to us yesterday. You've both sort of suggested that Brandon Allen is going to make the final 53, And the 49ers, we all believe, at least I do, that they're not keeping 4 quarterbacks. So the idea of keeping Trey, what does it look like?
You'd have to cut Brandon Allen. You know, you're not keeping 4 quarterbacks. Now, let's just let me say this, and let's be. I say they're not keeping 4 quarterbacks. Look, the thing that I think people really miss a lot when they say, "Well, you can't keep 4 quarterbacks." Well, next Tuesday is not, underline is not, put it in all caps, put it in bold, put it in italic, is not your final roster. It isn't. And the reason that it's not your final roster is because a lot of teams will keep guys on their roster, and these guys who they keep on their final roster, they will keep knowing that they are either going to trade them before opening day, or if they're not going to trade them before opening day, they are going to they'll cut them before opening day. And you say, well, geez, then why would they keep them? Because they think in the event, in case of the 4 people who play quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, that, you have to ask yourself right now, if you can't trade Trey Lance by next Tuesday, if they don't get a good offer, then this is just me. I think they got to keep him and hope that at some point before opening day they can do it, and at that point they would have an extra roster spot and probably bring somebody up from the practice squad who they really like at another position. But to me, I think the 49ers roster next Tuesday, if they're not able to trade Trey Lance before Tuesday, 49ers roster will not be final by next Tuesday.
Peter, how confident should Niner fans be in Brock Purdy now that he is the number 1 without question, and Kyle Shanahan has said he is the real deal? How confident should Niner fans be that Brock Purdy can bring them number 6?
Well, I think to answer that question, you have to understand everything that Brock Purdy has been in his 15 months as a Niner so far. And one of the things I remember doing some Brock Purdy research and talking to people last year about him is that guys like Fred Warner, Azeez Al-Shaair, Dre Greenlaw, these guys were, and I'm not saying they were in awe of Brock Purdy, but they told the coaches, and they were well aware that if this guy has to play, we're going to be all right. And I was at the Miami game last year when Brock Purdy came in, and there was a play in the course of this game. I believe it was in the third quarter, but it might have been in the second quarter, where he stared down the barrel of a Miami pass rusher. Might have been Jalen Phillips. I don't recall. But he stared down the barrel of a pass rusher. He knew that he was going to take a monster hit. And he waited till the last second, the absolute last second. And he released the ball and he threw it to George Kittle. Kittle caught it, converted the first down, and they went on to score. And the only reason I bring that up is that when I sat with Kyle Shanahan after that game, that is the play he brought up, and that is the play that I saw that day that I thought that is a big-time, 8-year veteran throw for a guy who's never played in the NFL before. So, look, you ask me what I think. What I think is that this guy is going to have a really good year. And look, everybody can say, well, what he did last year is not really that big a deal. Here's what he did last year. In the games that he played at least 3 quarters last year, he was 8-0. And he stepped into a situation where it was a playoff team that had a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And look, we could argue all day. if he doesn't get hurt against the Eagles, what would happen? I think the Eagles would have won the game. But be that as it may, what about all the other games he played? What about? And he didn't play great, but I mean, Dallas's defense is a very good defense. He didn't play great against Dallas, but he won the game. He managed the game. He won the game. And you look at all the other games he played down the stretch, starting with Miami. And again, look, I might be wrong about this because I've been wrong about a lot of things in my life. I'll be very surprised if he's not a good NFL quarterback.
Peter, really, really thankful for your time today. Great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too. Football Morning in America, NBC Sports. That is Peter King.